Welcome to Grace this weekend. Thanks so much for being here. Again, my name is Ryan, just one of the pastors on staff, and I'd love to hear maybe how you made your way to the campus today. If somebody invited you or you just kind of popped in and want to check things out. If you're new, let me just tell you about a few things that have been happening. It's kind of an exciting time here in the family of Grace, and there's been a big conversation that really started about 4 weekends ago where we opened up a new season, kind of a new chapter at Grace, where we're looking to move from this location to another one. We've been talking about the vision behind that, and there's a big series called Here to There, and you can check it out if you want to online, if you want to catch up with it. But mainly what we've been doing is kind of looking at that reality of what it means for us as a church to move from this building to that building, and then on a much deeper level, to move kind of from where we are spiritually to where we want to go. And what it means for us together to embrace what God is calling us to. And so that's what we've been talking about for the last 4 weekends. And then last weekend was our commitment weekend, where we all said, hey, I'm in. And there were 3 different commitments that we made together. We said, yeah, I'm in to grow. I want to grow in my spiritual life, my relationship with Jesus. We said, I want to participate. I want to be in on it. I want to be part of the group or the team or whatever it takes to be a part of making this happen. And then also there was a financial piece of it where we said this takes financial resources to move forward on some of these pieces. And so we all said yes to that last weekend. And then maybe if you're part of the family here, you may have heard already. If not, I'll be glad to be the first one to tell you that God has been very gracious and faithful to us. We had a goal of raising $600,000, and right now we're north of $650,000. Which is super exciting. You can clap for that. Yeah. So thank you for your generosity. We're super grateful to the Lord. But thanks for giving to the work of the Lord. That is huge. That we would look at a call that God has on us as a people and that we would step into that call. And thank you for trusting Grace Church with those resources and to move them into the work that God has for us. I know a handful of days ago, there's still pledges coming in, so we're kind of keeping up with all that's happening. There's somewhere north of 190 or more pledges that have come in, which is awesome. The thing that I get the most excited about is that you and I have decided to move forward and to be changed spiritually, to grow. That fires me up. I'm not even sure if any of us can quite imagine what happens in a group of people that say, Jesus, I want you to change me. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to move forward and to become the person that you want me to be. And so very excited about all that. And especially if you're new, of course, just wanted you to know that that's kind of where we are. Don't feel any pressure at all to interact with anything I just told you, just kind of getting you up to speed. If you're part of the family here and you, many of you have told me I wanted to get my pledge and I forgot it. We weren't here last weekend, whatever. If you want to grab a pledge and throw it in those black boxes in the back, feel free to do that. Also, if you have already pledged and you want to give a first gift, this is a great time to do that, as we all kind of just take a step forward and say, hey, I'm in. I'm going to get started in being faithful on what God has called me to do. Also, with that, you should have received some communication from us if you've already pledged. If you haven't gotten an email or something yet, check your spam filters or let us know, because we have reached out. So if you haven't heard from us, we want to make sure you're getting communication from us so that you can take steps to grow, you can take steps to get on a team or in a group, and we all just want to move forward with what God has for us together. Excited about that and kind of blown away at what God is doing. And as we kind of continue to move forward as a church, it's going to be pretty fantastic, I think, to see how God continues to lead us and provide for us. What we're doing this weekend is we're jumping into a new series called Make Room. Super excited about this one as we kind of anchor into the holiday season a little bit. Thanksgiving, of course, coming up this weekend, and then Christmas is coming rapidly, which is wild. We want to just have a series of conversations about what it means to kind of make some space in our hearts, in our minds, in our lives, so that we can actually enjoy what God is doing in us. We can enjoy Jesus himself. And what I find, at least in my life, is that there's a constant pull towards distraction, and there's a constant pull towards busy. There's a bunch of reasons for that, but all of us, I think, probably feel that there's a tug that way over and over. And I find that this time of year, it is super refreshing for me if I can, on purpose, with intentionality, kind of interrupt some of that distraction and busyness and make some space. And just carve out some space to hear and to listen and to be quiet and to be refreshed. And so that's what we're going to talk about a lot over the course of the next bunch of weeks, is how do we do that? What does that look like? So some things we're going to be talking about over the course of the series are things like delight, that God created delight. He created joy. What does it look like for us to embrace delight, to make space for delight in our lives? How do we give thanks and see that play out and kind of blossom in our lives and our hearts and minds? What is Sabbath like? We're going to talk a little bit about what the Sabbath is, why God gave that, and what are some principles we can walk away with personally to be changed and to be refreshed that way. We're going to talk about how do I make room for things like looking at my thoughts, I don't know what's playing out in my mind, and even making some room for things like silence, which some of you I know just got really uncomfortable, right? The word silent, like I don't like it. But we're going to talk about it. And today what I want to do is just kind of open up a conversation, set a framework a little bit to get us into a ballpark, and then we'll begin to put more and more skin on it. And here, just hear me. I was telling somebody about this, describing the series about a week or so ago. I said, what I really want to see happen in this series is I hope that you walk out of these rooms lighter, unburdened. I hope that because of what we're talking about, that more of your day and more of your week, and of course even your experience here in the room, there is more levity, lightness of heart that we can experience, a little more peace, a little more joy, a little less anxiety. And that even as we move towards Christmas and kind of making room for putting our minds on the reality that God came to the earth, which is an awesome reality, I hope that we can grab hold of those things and find a grip on the life that is eternal life. Right? And let me just say this, right? Because I realize that some of us are in the room and maybe don't have a relationship with Jesus. This series is going to put some practical skin on like what followers of Jesus do to have a real relationship with Christ. I remember, because I didn't grow up in the church, I remember always kind of thinking that. I'm like, saying you have a relationship with Jesus sounds really weird. You can't see this person. He's somewhere else. It's by faith. How do you have a relationship with Christ? And so we'll put some practical skin on it. Probably you're going to even be able to find some takeaways that will help you even as you're kind of exploring this relationship. And really, I think for all of us, again, the hope and prayer is that we walk away a little lighter, a little more aware of what God is doing in us, and a little more current and kind of present in his work in us. I was thinking about this, and a few passages came to mind. One of them I wanted to dive in here and kind of set the framework and foundation. And I love what Jesus does. Jesus would do these amazing things where he was always teaching. Right? Jesus was like the consummate teacher, always teaching. And he would find these situations where things played out, and he would grab the moment and grab an interaction maybe with people or with circumstances, and he would find the lesson, and he would kind of in real time press a lesson into a moment. that wasn't necessarily a sermon. It would certainly capture his heart and what matters most. And I think this passage we're going to look at does that in a really neat way. And it's something I've been thinking about for quite a while now, as I've been trying to build these practices into my life of trying to make room, something that I find very difficult to do. But here's the passage we're going to jump into, Luke 10, verses 38 through 40. If you have a Bible, you can open to that. If you don't have a Bible and want one, take one. There's some underneath your chairs right there. Grab that, take it home with you, write your name in it. It's our gift to you. And you can just watch on the screen here if you want to. So here's what Luke tells us as he's kind of describing this story of Jesus interacting with some people. He says this. He says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things. He says, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Fascinating story, right? If it's the first time you heard this, you might be thinking, oh, that's interesting, right? There's fascinating, got a couple sisters that are interacting with Jesus, and one of them is taking the initiative, right? She's opening her home. She's being outward focused. All that's really good, right? Really, really good stuff that Martha's doing. She's like, she sees the teacher, she invites him in, she's making lunch or whatever, right? All the preparations that needed to be made, all seeming to do some really good stuff. And then you've got Mary that at first glance just kind of seems to be the lazy one in the story as you look at it kind of at face value. Jesus looks at her, and Martha at first seems to be right. Like, yeah, get Mary to help me. Stuff has to be done. Right? We're busy. We got things to do here. And then Jesus takes the situation and really flips it. And he actually says, Martha, you're upset about all this stuff, right? There's a lot going on here that you're worried about. And you're worried and upset about many things. And then he really, at least Luke shows us this, that in the story, Jesus makes Mary the hero. And he's like, Mary recognized what's really important. In this room, what actually mattered more than doing things for me was actually Mary's being with me and hearing my voice and recognizing me and being in my presence. And she has chosen this better thing. And if you grew up in church, you probably heard this a lot, that, like, you're a Martha, you're a Mary, or I'm a Mary, right? And we tend to adopt that mindset. And listen, I'm not sure that that's the point of the story. I'm not sure that's the point. It's not the point to walk away and say, well, I'm a doer like Martha. This is just hard for me. I probably never get it right. And I don't think the point of the story is I'm a Mary, so I'm a student. I just listen, and right, I do a lot of that kind of, that thing. That comes down. The point is, everybody's a little bit of a Mary, and everybody's a little bit of a Martha. This passage of Scripture is about choices. It's about choices. Jesus said, she's chosen what is better. Only one thing is necessary. She has chosen it. It's not going to be taken from her. And so the call, as we look at the story, is, how do I choose the better thing? How do I make room for the things that are the most important? And somehow Mary in the story was able to really evaluate what mattered most and choose it. And that, I believe that's what God wants us to do. He wants us to, when we look at our lives, he wants us to be able to not just kind of like drones, just kind of mindlessly wake up and start scrolling, and right, I do this sometimes too, right? You mindlessly wake up and just start scrolling, and then get ready for work or school and go through the day and run through the motions, and come home and watch a show and go to bed and mindlessly wake up and scroll, and right, and on autopilot. Some of that's okay, some of it's maybe not so okay. God would have us, I think, interrupt some of that. Interrupt it and look into it. Because here's the thing. we just have to know this, right? Room has to be made for what matters most. That is going to be true in all kinds of arenas of life. Room has to be made. It has to be interrupted. Something has to change for me to make some space for the really big, important stuff in life. And here's how it tends to work for me. This is just my own personal experience probably, is I go through life in my doing, right? Usually what happens is, like Martha, I'll start off in kind of with a good heart, trying to do a good thing. And then what happens is that good thing that is from a good heart starts to turn into my thing. And then it turns into kind of the ultimate thing, the thing that is most important in my life. And I'll tend to get busy and busier and busier and busier. And usually over some time, what starts to happen is I will go a couple different ways. As I start to speed up and become overly committed to whatever it is I'm doing, eventually what will happen is I'll end up in some form of burnout. We've all been there, right? Where we get to a point where we're like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'm done with that, right? You served on the PTA or the blah, 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 and you're like, you know what? I quit. I'm done. It's over, right? Like, I'm not doing any more good things. I did good things for a long time. No more good, right? And so that can happen. Here's the other thing that I see happen in my life, and maybe in yours too, right? Is I'll get going, and then I will start to speed up into this frantic, overactive, kind of psycho mode where I'm just like, yes, more, right? And which eventually leads to burnout too, right? But first there's kind of like this overactivity mode, right? Overactivity, where I overcommit and start saying yes to the wrong things, and now I'm really doing way too much. Either one of these starts to just suck the joy out of life, right? We've all been there. And when I'm here, no joy. When I'm here, I'm just like, get me off this thing. Is there like an exit ramp somewhere? And what's really interesting is we're really not made to run this way. We're not made to run the way that we tend to run, which is like this: nonstop, no real breaks, no real days of disconnecting. Even our days off are full of duties, doctor's appointments, leaves, needs raked, blah, 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 right? Stuff has to happen, right? Where there's just a constant, steady accomplishment of tasks and things that need to be done. There's a constant, there's a constant occupancy in my mind where I'm always, now, this is the challenge of today, where I'm always occupied. My attention is being sucked into a screen or a device or a blah, blah, and it's kind of nonstop. Now, that's not against my will. I'm choosing to allow that to happen. But the reality is this is kind of what starts to happen, and we see the desperation in Mary in that moment, where really she's operating, she's worried, she's stressed out, she's upset. She kind of needs it. She needs the thing to go well. She's doing it for Jesus. She's doing right. And as we start to chase in life, I'm chasing the job, I'm chasing the thing, there's a hamster wheel, and all of this starts to get kind of stressful and wonky. And here's the thing, that's not actually how we're supposed to function. And the Lord will look at us and he'll offer us a different way. He'll offer us a different way. And this is how God made us, right? Because we're creatures. Whether I want to admit it or not, I'm a creature. I need water, I gotta sleep, I need put to bed, I need a star to shine on me, right? I need like the sun, which we're all like mourning that it's gonna go away soon, right? But that we are creatures, we're limited. I'm not superhuman, I can't go forever. And here's how God made us. We are made to do stuff, And then we need a rest. We need a moment to recover and recharge and to have truth and life and grace spoken back into us. And if we do this, if we make room, what will happen is we'll go back to doing, because stuff really does need to be done, right? All you practical people think that. You're like, well, somebody's got to make lunch, right? Right? Like, there's real stuff that really needs to be done. You're right, absolutely right. Right? We can't all just sit around and do Bible studies all day, right? So we got to actually do stuff. When we go back to doing, here's the thing. When we go back different. When I go back to doing, this doing is done with Jesus, not just for him. It's with him. And the doing is defined by longing to see him glorified. Lord, I want you to be made famous through this work that I'm doing. I want you to help me embrace school or work or these relationships. I'm going to say yes to things that I need to say yes to. I'm going to say no to things that I need to say no to. When I get into frantic mode, I just start saying yes a bunch. Why? Either because of my own things that I want to drive and move, or sometimes there's just a people-pleasing thing and I can't really say no because what if they got mad at me, and I lose track of all that. When I make room, what happens is I remember what matters most. I remember whose voice actually counts, who I'm actually living for. And this right here is an absolute game changer. And guys, we're going to talk about this in a bunch of different ways. This picture can happen in a day. This picture can happen over a year. This can be a lifetime, right? It can be whatever. But this process of going down, making room, taking a breath, being refilled and recharged, that I might go back and do differently, that's actually how God made us to be. Work 6 days, take a break, take a Sabbath. Work a handful of hours, take a few moments and reset, go back different. And what's awesome is the Lord helps us with this. Right? The Lord helps us with this. I love this passage. Psalm 23. This might sound familiar. Some of us, Psalm 23, 1-3. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me, listen to that passage. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. David, psalmist, the former shepherd himself, he understands what it means to be a shepherd. He understands that to lead sheep, you have to intentionally help them to do things that they're not going to do for themselves. Sheep, if you just left them alone, they will just run away. They'll just drift into no man's land, and a wolf will get them. Or a disease will capture them. A shepherd has to rally and gather and cause them to lie down and take a rest. Don't run until you are almost dead. Stop and take a little break. Take a breather. Enjoy the quiet waters. Sit down. I remember this when my kids were little, man. It was awesome. Like, I would watch them, especially as like babies-ish. They would laugh and be playing, and as they were getting tired, they would be laughing and playing, and you'd watch it, and it would turn into sobbing right in front of you. They're laughing, ah! Right? And you're like, what happened? They like expired right in front of you, right? As a mom and dad, we're like, oh, we would call it like they're going to expire. Before they expire, get them in the car seat, right? Like get them into the vehicle before they explode in front of all of us, right? So we would shepherd them. We would interrupt that process. This is what the Lord does for us. I don't always know when I'm tired. I don't always know when I need a break. And you know what I tend to say? I'm fine. I'm good. I got this. We've got 4 kids, which means, I just didn't think about it. When I was setting out to become a parent, we were having kids and all that stuff. I didn't think that means 4 labor and delivery experiences. Those are stressful. I'm like, I knew that needed to happen, but just hadn't spent a lot of time there. And anyway, so we made it through like having kids. And I remember the first one, I thought, I can't believe every human being comes into the world this way. This is very intense. But I did it, and then I did it again. And our third child, this was sweet. Our doctor was out of town, so we ended up having a midwife, and she was there with us. And I remember her being in the room, and she was like, "Do you want to deliver the baby?" I was like, "Not really." She's like, "Oh, come on." So I was like, "Okay," put the gloves on, and I caught our baby, right? Like, I'm like, I caught my child. Look, this is amazing, right? So by the time we went to our 4th kid, I was like, I'm basically a doctor. I mean, I delivered the last one. I'm really good at this, And so like it was the middle of the night when Olivia was on her way onto the planet, and it's so stressful. Like you're right. Lori's like getting very close. But there's like this lull where you rest and the lights are out and they're like, take a nap. It's gonna be a while, and then they do that, and then like this is how it happened this time, and then they all rush in all at one time. When now it's not time to take a nap and it's not time for the light. All of these bright lights come in. It's super intense. They're like, here we go, and you're like, half asleep, and you're like, I'm up, here we go, right? And you're up, and you're like, I'm feeling a little woozy, because it's the middle of the night, I really haven't eaten much, and the doctor's telling me to do stuff, grab a leg, do a thing, right? And you're like, okay, I don't know, and I'm in it, I'm trying to be there, be supportive, because, my wife's the one in labor, and then all of a sudden, I'm starting to dial it in, she's breathing, and then, my vision just starts to close a little bit. And this part over here gets dark, right? And I think I'm the only one that knows this, right? And I'm starting to fade, and I'm like, I don't think this is good. But I think I got it. And this little nurse, real short little woman, and she's like, "Sir, you need to sit down." And I was like, small human, be quiet. I've got 4 kids, delivered the last one, right? I got this. And I'm standing there a little longer, and she's yelling at me, "Sit down, sir." And I'm like, I do need to sit down. And right? And she's like, "Put your head between your knees." And right, I go down and do it. And I'm like, okay, I got it back. I'm under control. She's shoving orange juice in my face. And I'm like, all right, I'm good now, right? And she's like, "You are not good. Sit back down." And I was like, no, I got this, right? I'm having this argument. In the meantime, my wife's like, "I'm having a baby over here." Right? It'd be sweet if somebody would help me. So I almost passed out again. And then finally I sat down and drank some orange juice like a small child, right? It was great. But like, I didn't know I needed a break. I didn't know I was in trouble. Right? Left to my own devices, I would have bounced my head off the ground, right? I mean, for sure would have passed out. And right, I needed somebody to help me to make room. Just take a minute and take a break. Take a deep breath. And this is what the Lord does with us, guys. In a day, in a week, in a lifetime, the Lord is over and over and over inviting us, calling us, moving towards us to interrupt our normal and to sit down, to lie down beside green pastures. Here's what he wants to do. I want to refresh your soul. You running on your own steam will eventually cause, right, you and I to break down physically, emotionally, spiritually. The Lord is calling us to say, hey, I want to refresh you. I want to renew you. I want to remind you of who you really are and where the power you live in really comes from. And then when you go back in, because we got big stuff to do, right? There's many to-dos, and that stuff's important. I want you to be able to go back and to do it differently, to do it with me. We'll walk through it together. And you'll forget again and lose track of it and veer back on this path again, and we'll take another break. And I'm going to mess it up over and over. But the blue line plan is the one that God wants for his people. This black line plan is the one that I tend to like. Because at the end of the day, this part is hard. And I think this is what I want us to begin to drill into a little bit. It's hard to take a break. It's hard to sit down. I don't like sitting there drinking my orange juice. I want to be in the action. I don't want to stop working in the middle of a day to reset and to spend a little time praying and being quiet. I don't. Like, you're a pastor, man. It feels like you should probably do that. I'm just being honest. That's not natural. I like to move things. I like to get stuff done. I like to keep going. So do you. This is out of our comfort zone. We don't like to sit and here's a tough one. We don't like to be quiet. Hear this. It's easier to be busy than to be honest. You know what the quiet does? It surfaces our honest. That thing that we haven't dealt with that really needs dealt with, much more than that stuff that we think needs to get done right now, the real stuff, boy, all of a sudden that surfaces in the quiet. I don't like it because it's ugly and it's hard and it's challenging. But if I'm going to grow, I got to get down to that stuff. I got to let the Lord surface that in my life. We don't like breaks. I don't like them either. But if I'm going to grow, if I'm going to be shepherded, if I'm going to follow Jesus, my life's got to look a little more like the blue line than the black one. I want to live more and more out of a refreshed soul. Don't you? Don't you get tired of being ragged and running on fumes and feeling the weight and the anxiety of the world on your shoulders? You're not made to bear that. That's not yours to carry. It's not mine either. Somebody asked me the other day, they're going to ministry and earlier in the process and being trained to be a pastor and stuff. They said, Ryan, like, how did you just make it through this thing that you guys are in a kind of a big moment, right? Like, as a church, there's a lot of, like, there's some pressure. Like, how did you do that? And I said, man, the Lord is breaking my need for things to happen. I don't need it. I want it. I want the Lord's will to be done. It's his church. It's his problem. I'm gonna sleep at night. That has not always been true in my life. The church's problems were my problems. The work problems are your problems. The school problems are, right? The kids' problems are. We're not made to carry that stuff. We have a shepherd. And we can unburden here when our soul is refreshed and renewed in big and small ways. Here's the thing I got to know. If I'm going to make room, here's how it works. Making room takes energy, but it gives life. It takes energy, but it gives life. It takes some energy to stop. It takes intentionality to look and say, I really shouldn't do this period of time without a little window of interacting with Jesus. It takes energy to push pause in the middle of the work and to go be silent somewhere. Right? To sit in your car for 5 minutes. Open your hands and sit there into the driver's seat and say, Lord, this is yours, not mine. To go to the bathroom and take a two moms, right? Sometimes you get to go to the bathroom alone, right? If you're a stay-at-home mom, sometimes you don't. At home, at work, a 2-minute, a 5-minute break to catch your breath, recharge, and remember whose you are. Remember that the work that you're doing is seen by someone. The sacrifices that you're making are noticed. The work you're doing really, really matters. And I need that. You need that. That stuff takes energy, but what I walk away with is life. I walk away a little more strengthened, galvanized to go face what life is going to throw at me. Because my identity is less in it. I don't need it. Right? If I succeed or fail, my worth isn't tied up in that. Make sense? The way that is played out is in these little moments. You say, Ryan, how does that work? How can we do it? Because there's a ton of ways that we could break that down. I just want to give us a few. We're just opening the conversation. I want to give us a few practical approaches that we might take to make this happen in a day. And again, this blue line isn't earning us anything with God. We're not working our way to salvation. We're not becoming a good person. That's all garbage. If I'm a follower of Jesus, it's because Jesus, I put my faith in him, and he has done the work of making me right with God. All of this is just a response to what he's already done. It's just my relationship with him that I have freely because of what he did on the cross. Here's some ideas of how to make room in some small ways that I could do daily, okay? Here's some simple things. Maybe take some notes on your phone, or if you have pen and paper, you can jot these down. Here's a simple one. Turn off the tech. Turn off the tech. As followers of Jesus, if you're a follower of Jesus today, there's no way that you're going to make it or I'm going to make it through my days and my weeks and my months and my years without thinking very carefully and intentionally about my relationship with this and with the TV and with a computer or with a blah, blah. Hear me. These things are not evil. They're tools, but they pull out addictive behaviors in me, if I'm honest. You may not have a problem with this. I do. Okay? I'll just tell you, I do. I need limits with this. I need boundaries with this. Because the addiction to information and scrolling and data, that stuff, right? In the spare moments that there used to be room to think, now there's a draw to look and to update. And I think we need to understand that has an impact on this. It has an impact and it can short circuit it. So I want to make this a tool in my life and not a weapon against me. Right? Turn off the tech. That means there's probably got to be at least some, if there's no period of time ever that this on purpose is disconnected from me, that's a good starting point to begin to think through. Is it a few minutes a day? Is it a day a week? Is it I don't know. But something, right? You can figure it out. Turn off the tech. Turn off the TV. If when I'm bored or when I'm free, there's always some form of entertainment in front of me. Listen, entertainment, everyone pay attention. Entertainment is not this. Entertainment is fine and good and great when I'm looking to be entertained. When I'm looking to find rest, that is something different. I'm active in that rest. My mind is engaged in that rest. I'm aware. I'm not just mindlessly. So finding a way and figuring out where does technology play a role in that is critical. Right? If you can do it successfully and use apps that help, awesome, that's great. But finding a way to interact in a way that's helpful. Here's another one. Reset for a few minutes. Reset for a few minutes. If you think about a day, just one day, just tomorrow, and you've got blocks of time that you're working, you're in school, you've got classes, you've got a job, you're on the job site, you're in the office, saying, I'm gonna on purpose, in advance, pick a few times that I'm gonna sit and be quiet. I'm gonna sit and pray. I'm gonna maybe read one verse, maybe 2 to 5 minutes. Maybe I'm journaling a few thoughts out. Guys, we try this over a day, and we string a handful of days like that together, I can pretty much guarantee you're going to see a massive impact. Pretty much guarantee it. Reset, it only takes a few minutes. And I just want you to hear me say this. When I do this, I never want to do it. I do not want to stop. When I need to stop, I don't want to stop. I'm just telling you. If you think, well, I'm a follower of Jesus, I'm going to feel like doing, that's not how it works for me. Just so you know. I gotta make room. Sometimes violently grab my own attention and rip it from the addiction and place it in front of the Lord. You and I, listen, we bear the burdens of all kinds of things that we can't control. You can't control inflation. You can't control Russia. You can't control who the president is. You can't control anything. You can't control your neighbor. You can't control that guy that cut you off in traffic. None of it. Here's what you can control and what I can control. Where my attention goes. I choose where I put my focus, my conscious thought, what I do with my thoughts and my emotions. Here's what I'm pleading for you and I to work on and focus on, is that we would not surrender the few very precious things that actually live within our control. There's only a handful. I don't want to surrender those. I want to take those, and like the scriptures say, take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. So I don't think you're going to feel like doing that, because I don't. If you do, that's awesome. Good for you. I think it's going to feel like an interruption, a difficulty, an annoyance, and then you're going to get in it and be like, really glad I did that. That's how it works for me every time. Reset for a few minutes. Here's another one. Set an alarm on your phone. Right? Maybe it's making a way to set a reminder, and I'm going to write down a few pieces of gratitude, or I'm going to stop and pray. I'm going to read scripture, and at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., I'm going to do this. Why? Because it earns me something with God? No, but because I'm fighting for my relationship with Christ, fighting for the own health of my mind and my heart, because I don't want to do this plan. I want to do the blue one. Game changer. Game changer. You might have 1,000 more ideas on how this works. This is just to get us started, just to get us going. Right? But here at the end of the day, here's the big prayer, right, in this series. Lord, refresh my soul. But what do I want you and I to have for Christmas? This, refreshment of soul. That is a better gift than literally anything you could get materially, right? Better than winning the lottery is a refreshed soul. I know lots of people that have made it big financially that do not have peace of mind or refreshment of soul. And they would say, this is poverty. This is wealth. This is real riches right here. This is the good stuff. If we're going to grow, if we're going to move from here to there, we got to learn how to make room in micro ways and in big ways in our lives. And guys, I'm saying part of this because I'm tired. I'm tired. I told a bunch of pastors the other day, talking about how we're doing. I said, because I'm not always good at knowing this, I think I'm tired. I think I need a break. I think I need to sit down. I'm not quitting. I just need a rest. I need to say, okay, creature, Ryan, it's time for you to just sit for a minute. Take a breath and get back up and go. It happens to you. It happens to all of us. It's not weakness. It's humanity. It's how we're made. And we have a really, really good God that is kind and wants us to draw into that we can find refreshment of soul. That's what we're going to dive into together. Because let's ask God to do this in us. Move the band come out. Would you pray with me? Lord, thank you that you are the only one that can really refresh a soul, that can breathe life into us, that can set us free by truth. Lord, you love us enough to fight for that in our lives. And you've entrusted us with the responsibility of making room. You help us with it. You call us to it. You remind us through your Spirit to do it. But the choices are ours. I pray, Lord, that you would help each and every one of us to see the high value of making room for you, making room for thinking and dwelling on your gifts, the gifts that you've given to us in people, in provision, in joy. Lord, help us to release our grip on control, on activity. And Lord, help us to grab hold of the life that is truly life, the life that brings refreshment, peace. Lord, you begin to do that in us even now. As we sing to you and worship, hear our prayer, Lord. Cause us to be a little different as we make room for you. Meet us here even now.